Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. I hope you enjoy. Detective work gets interesting, with humans involved. Written by Grand Admiral 98. Detective Exaxa wandered around the darkened streets before the lampposts turned on. Apparently, the fugitive was somewhere in this lazy backwater planet, hidden from any prying eyes, except for all the eyes staring at her, of course. Offworlders tended to stand out in a world like this. Bloody fecking hellhole on a kebab stick, she told herself. Of all the planets in the galaxy, this fecker had to choose the one run by criminals, smugglers, and wannabe revolutionaries. Moron probably thought that she was one of them. Maybe she just was trying to play smart. But places like these would chew her up and spit her out unless she knew exactly what she was doing. Probably, though, she picked the first unmarked planet and tried to escape to it, and rented a starship because she forgot those things have tracking devices. The detective was told the planet to start investigating, but none of the background. Someone wanted all of this or the hush-hush. They only gave Exaxa the vaguest descriptions of the fugitive, only that a set of new implants had driven them insane. The only sure thing was that the person was greener than a baby on a roller coaster. The only reason that they were alive was because of the top-of-the-line tech implanted in her. When she heard the girl's description, it sounded too good to be true. 10 times speed, strength, and 7 times reflexes. Insane augments, far better than her own. Though strangely, they never really said the girl's species, only a description, which sounded iffy to the detective. Bipedal, tan skin, mammalian, all that. No species name. That's usually what any organization starts with. It's almost as if they didn't want her to find the girl. Whatever. She made sure she got paid a stupidly expensive rate by the hour. If they didn't send her more info, she could just sit here a week and think nothing more of it. Except for the fact that there was physically not enough money in the galaxy to get her to stay here for a single second longer than necessary. No, she would find the girl, even if she had to kidnap every 1.7 meter sentient female on the entire damned planet. This planet itself was forgotten, but every nation which gave a damn, run by small-town mobsters, and dangerous and faraway place for a psycho like this girl to get herself to. But if she truly had all these implants, at least they would not go fully to waste. Planet Toral was better left forgotten and unseen, a position she would gladly have left it, except that her fecking fugitive decided to squat here. The sooner she could find her, the sooner she could get paid, the sooner she could go out. Win, win, win. This fecking hellhole could throw itself into the Eklecki Orcs' anus for all she cared, and the girl could join it there for making her aware of this place even existed. The problem, as always, was finding the fugitive. She ditched and rented a ship soon after landing, and then disappeared. There weren't too many options for her to hide in, but this was still a planet. No central information network or internet either, just as a crap hole of anarchy ought to be. She hacked the orbital defense platforms to kill any ship getting away from this place. That should keep the gangs and mafias occupied for a few days. Good thing her patrons basically gave her a blank check to get the material she needed for the stuff. She would have to find the girl the old-fashioned way. The problem? She didn't have a guide. She didn't have a contact here. Worse, she didn't have any contacts who had contacts here. Just goes to show how utterly bizarre this place was. It was like discovering a playboy who decided to become a priest. It just didn't happen. She had one main advantage. Apparently, one of the implants had a tracker, which would signal to her when she got within 500 meters of this fugitive. As the day turned to night, she decided that she would do a basic search pattern of the town, just in case a simple-minded idiot decided to hide out somewhere obvious. She had her sleep nullifiers on her, so she didn't need to find a place to rest for at least a week. Most likely, she'd know just enough to blindly believe that the mayor's office was built on top of the local strip club, though judging by the look of the place, that remained to be seen. But, to tell the truth, she wouldn't mind beating a few small-time criminals for fun. Maybe the relentless and amusing violence would make up for this whole mess in the first place. It wasn't long before she heard the noise behind her. About time. She turned around with an augmented speed, ready to lash out at what was probably a petty thief, figuring an off-worlder was easy pickings. A couple of kids screamed and ran away. Just kids, probably planning to knife her and take whatever belongings she had. Fecking morons. She turned around, and centimeters from her face was a dark figure stood. She immediately jumped back 5 meters with her augmented speed and drew her weapon, sweat dripping from her brow. No one. She scanned her surroundings. Nothing. Must have been a trick of the light. It was impossible that anyone could sneak up on her like that. She had 360-degree infrared, X-ray, ultra, and infrasonic scanners. No one could simply just sneak up on her. She tentatively continued walking forwards. But, with no other noise, she holstered her gun and started walking again. "Hey, don't point that at me. I get nervous with guns and stuff," her voice from the shadows said. She froze again. What was he? A ghost? Ha! No. Obvious. A holographic emitter. Someone decided to spook her using one. That's why she didn't read anything until right before the voice. Now, all of the emissions existed, but those could all be faked. She turned around. The relatively short figure wore a fur-lined blue hoodie, which made it impossible to see his face, or even his species. Bipedal, though, so that was something. She almost rolled her eyes at her own jitteriness, but using holograms for a prank like this was new. Would there be a couple of pickpockets around the corner, waiting for their moment? "But," she said, impatiently. The figure laughed. "That's no way to talk to an old friend like me." It extended its hand. Exacxa stared at it. What was it doing? "What, they don't know how to do a handshake in your world?" Exacxa stared at the figure. "You're a hologram. Don't even try to deny it." The figure stared at her and laughed. Almost had ya, didn't I? Detective Exacxa, right?" He retreated, his hand twirling it around like a moron and grinning like an idiot. White square teeth shining from the shadow. "Well," he shrugged and walked past her, both his hands tucked into his pockets. "Detective Exacxa, right?" She tried to say something, but the figure in the blue hoodie talked over her. "I know about you, and I know about your up. You were hired to track that crazy lady who came here a couple of days ago, right? But I'm better at finding people than you." He turned towards her with a smile. "What do you say I take it to her? You bring her in, I take 25%. You take the rest, you get off this rock, and I get off on whatever. Deal?" She couldn't quite believe the character of this guy. "Let me see your face and know your name first." Exacxa folded her arms and leaned against the wall. "As you wish, my lady." The figure pulled down his hoodie, somehow without using his hands. His broad grin still plastered on his face. His face almost white, a tuft of pure white hair, blue eyes, obviously human. What was a backwater race from the other end of the galaxy doing here? "Call me Dante, you don't really want to know more. And I know all about you. So, let's get you to the girl before she decides to make the reactor go nuclear or some small thing like that. Capiche?" She rolled her eyes, then followed the primitive. They didn't walk for long before her questions started to pile up. Finally, she indulged herself. "What in the hell is a human doing here? It's not like anyone else could do the job just as well." Dante kept grinning, then glanced at you. "Like you," she huffed. "No offense, ma'am, but some things require special talents." He stared at her legs, which were indeed talons. She almost punched his stupid grin then and there. But she remembered that this was just a hologram, and he'd laugh at her for it. She'd rather open a strip club under the mayor's palace down this planet than be subjected to that. "Anyways, I'm just here on some business which ya don't care about, with some people you don't care about, and they want ya to get the lady. So I want ya to get the lady. Simple, nah?" Exacxa looked back at him. What was the human even talking about now? "Are we getting close, or are you only pretending not to waste my time?" He kept talking through his grin. "Should be almost within range for you to detect her." He hesitated. "Just so you know, I'm a guide. I'm not involved in your fights unless absolutely have to. So, you take care. No whoopsies, else it gets a bit serious. Babe's got some gear under her hood, if you know what I mean." If he was this useless, he should just wipe the grin off his face. Plaster it on a billboard instead. Maybe then other people could be as miserable as she felt. He'd probably become a billionaire from everyone who would pay him to get to wipe it off the billboards. She looked back at her readings. 500 meters. There it was, finally. One simple job, and she could finally get off the stupid rock. It didn't take long to get into the empty warehouse. The ugly, barely lit rectangular shape contrasted in front of the night sky. Exacxa entered without making any special effort to be discreet, confident that she was more than able to handle whatever was going to happen. Whimpering, or was it sobbing, came out from the far wall of the mostly empty warehouse. It only had a few steel pillars and some piles of boxes with white sheets over them. The sounds came from behind one of them. She smiled and looked up at her protocols again. Capture, do not kill, augmented and extremely dangerous. The detective smiled. This would be a good fight. She oriented herself towards the noise, her implants giving her an almost pinpoint location. She unholstered a gun and telepathically commanded it to load an electric net. She aimed above the box, and the net was guided towards its target, and would likely cause a surge throughout the implants, immobilizing it. Smash and grab, like she liked it. She aimed and fired a single shot. The bullet arced over the boxes and fired thrusters and dove towards the target. The net expanded to cover the entire area and charged electrical wires. The figure, who had just been crouched and crying a few minutes before, instinctively jumped out of the boxes and stared at Exacxa with crazed eyes. Crazed, human eyes, to be exact. What was it with her and these humans today? The human let out a screech and sprinted towards her from 60 meters away. She was fast. Exacxa managed to shoot her in the head 12 times with her EMP bullets, but it obviously had some sort of surge protector or energy shield. Damn all of this and their mother. She jumped out of the human's path as she barreled past for another 20 meters as she broke through the black steel wall, making a hole in it as if it were made of jello. Exacxa creaked her arms. That would have hurt. The human turned around, looking maniacally at the detective. She showed obvious signs of psychosis, probably some runaway program that gradually took over parts of the psyche. Always an issue with experimental tech. Likely her pain receptors were malfunctioning, hence why she refused to stay down after EMP shots. Exacxa took out another gun as she kept it holstered to her left side, one filled with lethal ammunition. It would take more than a non-lethal bullets to take this one down. The human stared at her, then jumped a dozen meters into the air towards her. Perfect. Exacxa calculated her trajectory and fired 3 high-explosive rounds towards her. 2 shot wide as the human showed surprising maneuverability mid-air, but the third one hit true, sending her flying back towards the ceiling. In a fluid movement, the human oriented her legs towards the ceiling and bounced off on another vector with enough strength to cause the whole structure to buckle. Exacxa wouldn't let her escape. She jumped onto the crates and tracked the human and fired 3 homing HE rounds towards her. By some method, the human grabbed a pillar with a single arm and swung back towards her like an acrobat, the missiles exploding harmlessly behind her, and the human flying not so harmlessly towards the detective. Exacxa had the time to throw down one of the portable shields to bounce the human off, sending it flying out towards the crates again. She only had one more of those. She had to be careful. The human wasn't to be underestimated. If she was completely honest, this could end very badly for her. Feeling nervous for the first time in a long time, she could get into some very serious problems if that human caught her in a grappling range. The human's face changed from crazed to almost dead. At least she got the human to recognize her as enough of a danger to activate the combat mode of the implants, she thought. The human glanced towards her, then ran at her haphazardly, causing her targeting computer to go crazy. No matter. Exacxa jumped backwards onto a heap of crates, unloading 2 more nets in front of her to restrict the human's movement. The human somersaulted over them, just as expected. She unloaded a full clip of 12 HE missiles on her. The human evaded most of them, but 2 hit her left shoulder, causing visible damage. No, she had lured 3 missiles to her left side. She caught one of the missiles without it exploding and hurled it back towards Exacxa. The detective jumped out of the way of the explosives. She was blinded for 1.2 seconds. In that time, the human bounced off the ground where Exacxa had stood and barreled towards her, her right fist connecting with the detective's stomach, barreling the detective 4 meters into the air with a definite internal bleeding. Before she could get back onto the ground, the human jumped after her and punched her again mid-air. This time, Exacxa had the presence to lock her arms together and deflect the blow. It sent her flying towards a pillar. That would at least make some distance between them. Exacxa's medical implants were quickly healing her injuries, but they needed a minute. She probably couldn't take too many more of those punches. Just how many implants did this girl receive, damn it? The human girl sprinted towards her. No time to think. She lost her guns. Time to get serious. They weren't as effective anyway. Exacxa spread her arms and legs. She hated using this mode, but this moment called for it. Her shirt and trousers ripped, her meter-long blades came out of her forearms, and jump springs came out of her talons. As the human barreled towards her again, Exaxa jumped away from the human with ease, using her newfound agility, and slicing open the human's back, splashing red, hot blood onto her blade. She should be careful. Though this mode had serious benefits to agility and attacking ability, it seriously weakened her arms and legs. One hit from the girl and they could break them off. The human chuckled as she stretched her arms around their full range of motion. Damn, that range of motion. Was the girl an acrobat or something? That cut barely seemed to faze her. No, if Exaxa was going to get her bagged, she needed to go on the offensive. This time the detective took off at a sprint towards the human, almost as fast as the human herself. The human glanced in surprise at how she saw her covering the dozen meters in less than 2 seconds. Exaxa swung her blades towards the girl. She arched herself backwards almost 90 degrees, then spun around and kicked the detective in the ribs, sending the detective flying towards the nearest wall. 2 more ribs broken, but there was no time to heal this time. No time to activate a shield either. The girl had followed the detective and used a single kick to crush the detective's right arm. As Exaxa screamed in pain, the human grabbed the detective's left shin and almost completely crushed it. The detective was just barely able to find a round of armor-piercing ammo in her pocket. She grabbed it with her remaining hand and slammed it against the human's neck, the self-propelled uranium shell piercing her skin and pushing the human into the ground. Exaxa could now barely walk. She put her weight onto her leg and jumped towards the exit. She'd only bounced twice when she saw the human get back up. What exactly was in that thing? Was it even biological at this point? Exaxa knew that she couldn't fight it. Her only chance was to run. But the human took a rock, a simple rock, and threw it straight at the detective's head, sending her crashing towards the ground. The girl advanced towards her. Exaxa closed her eyes. Unless she thought of a way out. This would be it. A cold fear froze her spine as she looked at the human slowly making her way towards her, the girl's own medical implants repairing her damage, whereas the detectives were still struggling with the first fractures. She tried to crawl away. The human threw a rod, impaling the detective through her stomach, where she laid. Now she started to tremble in fear. Was this it? On a forgotten world in the middle of arse end of space. Feck! Yeah, a familiar voice resounded in her head. Looks like you need a bit of help. Dante, that damned fool. If you're going to do something to distract her, you better do it now, she screamed. Oh, I will, he said in a falsely jovial tone. But don't say I didn't warn you that this was a toughie. Idiot, of course he didn't. He appeared behind the human girl. Oi, you, he screamed out, his hand still in his hoodie's pockets. The girl looked around towards him. Why don't you pick on someone your own species? The girl lunged towards him with even greater speed than she fought Exaxa, covering the 60 meters in less than 2 seconds. He disappeared into thin air, as he always did, and reappeared 20 meters away. She jumped towards him again, but he didn't disappear this time. He somersaulted over her and landed perfectly on a single leg, facing the girl, on some of the crates behind her, releasing a cloud of dust as he hazily kicked up some dust. In that moment, Exaxa froze with terror, as she never felt before, not even a few moments ago. This was the moment when she realized he wasn't a hologram. Dante smiled, but this wasn't the innocent smile from before. This was a cruel smile, a manic smile. Gods, did every human have one of those smiles? The girl swung at him again, but he ducked under and over her several times, always faster. Not only just faster, he made the girl look like a 200-year-old trying to fight a professional soldier in their prime. He was making a game of it. Finally, he had enough and seemingly simply lifted a leg and sent the girl careening towards a pillar. He stretched his neck, then looked lazily back down at the girl. The girl looked angry, but this time she didn't charge him. She waited to see what he would do. He just laughed. Ha! You're finally afraid to fight someone with your own species now. The girl sniffed like an animal. For an instant, Dante looked sad. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. It shouldn't have happened. You don't deserve it. The girl sniffed at him again. His evil smile returned, and he just shrugged. But anyways, it's always fun dancing with you, even like this. His face grew pale and serious. His eyes lost all their color, seemingly draining from all around him as he emitted darkness. But now it's time for you to come back home, Lara. She lunged at him, and he yet again teleported behind another pillar. The girl charged at him again, but his left hand was finally outside of his pocket, his palm open towards her. She ran towards him, and his left eye shone blue. Blue smoke erupting from it. His toothy smile plastered on his face as his breath also released the brilliant smoke. There was a flash of light from his palm. The girl was pulled upwards by an immense force, crushing her towards the ceiling, almost collapsing the whole warehouse. He pulled his fist down and seemingly flung her to the ground almost instantly. Dante made a single flick of his wrist. Glowing blue smoke broke out from around and formed a large metal chains around the girl's arms and legs, completely immobilizing her. He touched his hand to the ground, and Exaxa saw the electricity arc through some unknown path through the ground and electrocuted the human. After a short scream, she fell unconscious. Just like that, Dante stared at Exaxa. With that one blue eye and that same toothy grin, the detective somehow felt more afraid now than when she thought that she was about to die. Sorry about that. Weren't exactly supposed to see that, but Lara here kinda went overboard. So I'll say sorry for this too. He snapped his fingers, light emanating from them, and she felt herself hurled into a deep sleep. She woke up on her ship, in space, with a suitcase full of money. What just happened? Her ribs felt fine. She even looked at her arms. They were both just fine, though apparently her shirt did change. She got out of her seat and looked through the ship's logs. Everything from the last 3 days were deleted, all except for one document, a video. She opened it. Hey, the familiar voice of Dante spoke, with his infamous grin and his hoodie. Well, I know you got back safe, for what it's worth. I'm sorry about the mess with Lara. There is always a much greater chance of psychosis when you downgrade a person's implants. You know how it is. Exexa sighed. What was it with these humans? Did they all have implants like those? Those would have been top of the line, until she saw whatever Dante had, of course. Anyways, I can't say much, but you impressed me with your skills anyways. So paid you in full ×2 for your trouble. She glanced over at the suitcase. It was indeed very full. Anyways, I'd much appreciate it if you didn't mention that humans were involved in any of this. Otherwise, it's going to be your next of kin that are going to be enjoying the cash. She chuckled, fecking Dante. Only he could make a threat seem both serious and half-hearted at the same time. So job's done. We've written your cover story to put in your resume if you really want to talk about it. Just as she was about to click off, he continued, By the way, I was actually impressed by your fight. Lara wasn't supposed to be able to use more than 10% of her cap. You stood up to her right up until she went to 30. So, if you like the cash in that suitcase, we can make use of a few detectives like you. Once you wake up, just send a 136.7 megahertz microwave signal, and I'll know you'll be up for more. What do you say? Ready for round 2 and a truckload more cash? Exaxa closed her eyes, grinning. Humans. They didn't want humans involved in this. The resources, the breadth of the operation, the hush-hush. This wasn't a random corp. This didn't feel like a corp. No. She was ready to bet her ship and that these guys were somehow involved in the human government. Somehow. And humans, that faraway backwater race on the other end of the galaxy, here, with powers beyond imagining. She actually laughed at the absurdity of it all. Yes, she almost died. But anyone had to admit, it was rather interesting. She pressed the button to admit the microwave frequency. An incoming transmission immediately played on her ship. Dante again. Glad you decided to stay. Ready for a small trip to a regional media office run by a corrupt politician? She shrugged. It's more fun with you guys around anyways. But you're all paying me double. Dante looked off into the distance. 1.5 sounds good. Deal, Exaxa said. Where we're heading. End of story. I would quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and Patreons. Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Lord Azrakal, It's Difficult to Pronounce, Dragzoon WRE, Holly's Sister, Arcadian. Thank you very much.